We're bringing the swingometer up to date to make room for the kind of swings. There have been several, around 9%.
Has a tendency to wobble up and down in the middle because the screws loose.
At the beginning of the evening, Mrs. Thatcher needs 4.5% swing to get...
And here in the studio, Peter Snow will be telling the story with his latest wizardry.
4 decades of swingometer technology, and for 2001, it's time for something new and off the wall.
But this time, for the first time in history, we're going to bring it down off its wall and lay it right down here on the studio in front of us. And it won't this time be a pendulum that moves among the MPs, scything them up and down. It'll be a laser beam, zapping them from blue to red and red to blue.
This year's so-called laser swingometer was, of course, nothing of the kind, but it was a technically risky use of the BBC's 3D virtual reality system, with brilliant graphics and a few new techniques thrown in. It was also the first time the BBC had used its own 3D virtual technology live on air.
0.5%.
And we thought about Peter Snow and his sand pits, for which he's so famous from Newsnight, Golf 4 Days and so on. And we thought of putting the swingometer, turning it through 90 degrees and putting it on a table, a new sand pit if you like.
I think the nice thing about virtual reality is the way we've got it is that it looks as if it's part of the studio, it looks as if it's part of the set. As I understand it, the other side, and good luck to them, I'm sure it'll be wonderful, are using VR in a wholly virtual set. So there's a difference there, and it can be a very interesting rivalry between the two.
Most VR works where the presenters inhabit a complete environment. They live and work in the blue box, which has the walls, the floor, the ceiling, and all the lighting effects generated by the computer. We've sort of turned that inside out here. We've got a very exciting set, and what we've dropped inside it is an object which sits inside the reality, and it itself is the virtual.
Scything its way through the...
Peter's table is covered in TrueMatte, a BBC-designed retro-reflective cloth. This reflects back the green lights around each camera lens, a bit like a road sign reflects headlights. And this is what the two cameras see. The virtual image is then keyed in using chroma key. But unlike in ordinary chroma key work, the cameras can move completely freely, thanks to more BBC technology. A small upward-looking camera looks at a series of circular bar-coded targets suspended above. The image is analysed by a dedicated PC many times a second, and the studio camera position is calculated by trigonometry to enormous accuracy. That tells the computers drawing the 3D graphics exactly how the studio camera is moving, allowing the real and virtual images to stay precisely aligned, however the camera moves. Behind the scenes, the news graphics teams working with Peter generate a range of sequences, which of course use live data coming in from around the country. The demands on the team to come up with new ideas each time there's an election are enormous, and so are the demands on the two Onyx supercomputers on which the whole thing depends. In the gallery, the programme director Rob Hopkins sees the combined images on both preview and transmission screens.
I don't know how our experts do it, David.
We need to be able to drive cameras 5 and 6 as they are in this studio exactly as we would if they were working in the real domain. And Peter moves around and he springs over to the other side of the board, as it were, and we've got to be able to follow that action, and he's not slow.
Because of this, and because a lot of different graphics can appear on Peter's table, the camera operators need to see the combined image in their viewfinders, otherwise they can't frame the shots.
And it would be a Labour majority of 157.
TC1 is not normally used for virtual studio work, so a specially constructed set of bar-coded targets were hoisted into position specially for the election. For the targets to tell the computers accurately where the cameras are, their own positions need to be known with quite a bit of precision. Since they were up in the air, this didn't prove too easy. During rehearsals early in the year, tape measures were dangled down by people on ladders, and the team tried out a range of other devices, including theodolites and laser rangefinders.
So the target's actually at 8.795 metres above the ground.
What is it, the X and the Z axes coincidence?
The trouble was it took forever, was hit and miss, and wasn't that accurate.
Is that the best we can do? Is that the best we can do? I hope not.
Here you can see the misalignment in January 2001. The model and the table just don't seem to line up accurately. Production development worked with BBC R&D at Kingswood Warren to come up with something better.
During the first rehearsal we had a lot of problems with the tracking system. Kingswood Warren came down here and suggested a few new techniques which enabled us to get much greater accuracy without the need to ever have to climb up and touch the targets or get anywhere near the targets.
We now have a new software version that allows us to use a camera, as long as the floor underneath is flat, to automatically correct for the target discrepancies.
Another problem was the distortion caused when a camera uses a wide-angle lens. Danny Popkin explains.
Well, the computer can't render an image to match lens distortion, so it only renders an image from a perfect camera. And therefore, if you want to try and make edges of the pictures line up where a lens distortion is greatest, you have to undistort the lens image to match the computer image.
To deal with lens distortion, Kingswood Warren also came to the rescue. With production development's help, Richard Russell designed an electronic solution, a way of being able to undistort the image from the studio camera. Here you can see it being switched on and off, emphasizing the amount of distortion you get with a wide-angle lens.
Oh my God, isn't that amazing? Well now, oh hello, hello.
But there were also problems for Peter Snow. When he saw the first demonstration of what was possible, Peter's initial enthusiasm was tempered by how on earth was he going to see what he was pointing at. Remember, the computer draws the image from the camera's point of view and not his.
He's such a stickler for accuracy. He always wanted to point directly at the object that he's referring to. And we scratched our heads a few times and we came up with something called point of view projection.
A bright overhead projector hung amongst the targets shines a separate image of the Swingometer model onto Peter's table. The image is generated from a different angle from the one the viewer sees and is cruder but produced from an ordinary PC linked to the two supercomputers.
And that works all right. I mean, it doesn't need to be as brilliant as the one the viewer's seeing, as long as I can actually make out what colour the little seats are and who's popping up and showing themselves, it's fine. It just about works. I'm sure we'll be able to improve that over the years now.
Although thought of for the general election, point-of-view projection is a technique that could be used in other programmes. During the early rehearsals, there were also heated arguments about what the viewer would think of it all, especially reservations about the initial fly-down.
You ever knew drama at school?
I did, actually, yeah.
And didn't you enjoy it? Moments when the lights come up or the lights go down.
Mike, the other thing is there is an editorial reason as well, because if you can relate it to the old one that was in the screen, it actually cements it in people's minds.
Yeah, and it won't confuse people the fact that it's completely back to front.
No. They'll get that immediately, especially when they see it tipping over and go.
The supercomputers are working pretty much flat out. They're also used for Peter's more traditional back projection graphics system. But for the Swingometer, it's more challenging this year.
This time we really do have to hit frame rate. We can't afford to drop a single frame. On the Snow projector system, you can get away with dropping the odd frame here and there. But on this system, if you drop a frame, then you can immediately see it because the model becomes misaligned with the real world and it jerks.
The graphics sequences themselves have to be easy to program at short notice.
In order to put a sequence together, you just tap out on our little machine here which graphics out of us, I suppose a choice of, well, I suppose a choice of about 100, 200 graphics. Yeah. You just choose the ones you want, put them in a little row on the screen there and store them up in a queue. And then, of course, I can use my animator here. When I'm out on the set, I press this and that will animate the graphics from one to the other.
There's an awful lot of computers involved and what can go wrong will go wrong, I suppose, is the old adage. And my biggest fear is somewhere along the line we lose registration and we lose credibility because suddenly what looked like a nice real object, albeit a virtual one, ceases to look like that. That's the biggest risk we run.
Over here, if the swing, of course, oh, it's gone. So I'm quite used to looking ridiculous. I've not a major problem with any of this, but obviously the worry about VR, it looks utterly wonderful. But if suddenly the whole thing goes down, then frankly, rather like my screen behind me going down or any graphic going down, I'm left with a rather empty space. And I think with VR, the empty space is slightly more awkward than when the screen behind me goes black or the monitor goes black.
Luckily, this was a rehearsal. What caused the failure was Peter pressing his animator once too often. In software writing, they say there's always one more bug. Fortunately, this one was caught early and easily fixed.
No, I had to press it twice to get it to work.
Ironically, the most sophisticated swingometer technology in the BBC's history ended up displaying the smallest swing on record.
That the swing to the Conservatives is a small one of just 0.5%.
Nonetheless, a technical triumph. But in 2005, what next?
I must admit, I am completely in the dark about where we go next. I'm sure we'll go somewhere, and I'm sure virtual reality will play a very big part in it, but I'm not quite sure where we're going to go. It is 4 years away, I'm going to. Let's get this election over first.